A millionaire disguised himself as a poor man and went to a luxury car dealership to buy a car. See how the employees treated him. It was a sunny of superiority, ready to attend to the wealthy clients who frequented the place. Among them were Jack Richardson and Alex Murphy, known for being the best salesmen at the dealership. At the reception desk, a young woman of about 25 years, with brown hair tied in an elegant bun and expressive green eyes, was organizing some papers. Her name was Emily Johnson, and although she had only been working there for a short time, she had earned the respect of her colleagues for her efficiency and friendly treatment of customers. Suddenly, the doors opened, and a middle-aged man entered, dressed in a worn-out shirt, jeans, and battered shoes. His grey hair was messy, and he sported a few days' worth of beard. Despite his disheveled appearance, his blue eyes shone with unusual intensity. Jack and Alex exchanged looks of disgust upon seeing the newcomer. The man began to walk around the showroom, observing the cars with interest. When he approached a shiny red sports car, Jack couldn't contain himself any longer. "Excuse me, sir," he said in a condescending tone. "Can I help you with something?" The man turned and smiled kindly. "Yes, I'm interested in buying a car." Alex joined the conversation, chuckling. "Are you sure you're in the right place? Our cars are quite exclusive." The man didn't seem fazed by the comment. "I'm quite sure. In fact, I'd like to see the most expensive model you have." Jack and Alex exchanged another look, this time one of incredulity mixed with mockery. "Sir," Jack said with false patience, "perhaps it would be better if you looked elsewhere. Our cars start in the six-figure range." "I understand," the man responded calmly, "but I insist on seeing your best model." "Losing patience," Alex snapped. "Look, it's obvious you can't afford anything here. We suggest you leave before we have to call security." The man looked at both salesmen with an unreadable expression. Then, without saying another word, he turned and headed toward the exit. But before reaching the door, he stopped at the reception desk. Emily, who had been watching the scene with disapproval, smiled kindly at him. "Can I help you with something, sir?" The man returned the smile. "Yes, actually, I'd like to speak with the manager if possible." "I'm sorry, the manager is in a meeting right now," Emily replied, "but I can take your name and contact number and have him get in touch with you as soon as possible." "I'd appreciate that very much," the man said. "My name is Michael Roberts. Here's my card." Emily took the card and noted the information on her computer. "Perfect, Mr. Roberts. I'll make sure the manager gets your message. Thank you, Miss—" The man paused, reading the name on Emily's name tag. "Johnson, you've been very kind." With a final smile, Michael Roberts left the dealership, leaving behind a couple of salesmen satisfied with having protected their exclusive space, and a receptionist intrigued by the mysterious visitor. What none of them knew was that this seemingly insignificant encounter was about to trigger a series of events that would change their lives forever. Meanwhile, in his luxurious office on the top floor of a skyscraper across town, a man in an impeccable suit was looking out the window with an enigmatic smile on his face. He was Richard Mitchell, the owner of the factory that produced the luxury cars sold at Elite Motors. He had just hung up the phone after a conversation with his old friend, Michael Roberts. "Phase 1 complete," he murmured to himself before returning to his desk to start planning his next move. 3 days had passed since Michael Roberts' visit to Elite Motors, and life at the dealership had returned to its usual routine. Jack and Alex boasted about their latest sales, while Emily continued to attend to customers with her characteristic kindness. It was mid-morning when the dealership doors opened again, and to everyone's surprise, Michael Roberts walked in once more. This time, however, he was dressed in a casual but elegant suit, and his beard was neatly trimmed. Nevertheless, Jack and Alex recognized him immediately. "It can't be," Alex muttered under his breath. "What's that guy doing here again?" Jack, however, saw an opportunity. "Wait," he said to his colleague. "Look at how he's dressed now. Maybe we were too hasty the other day. Let me handle this." With a practiced smile, Jack approached Michael. "Good morning, sir. Welcome back to Elite Motors. How can we assist you today?" Michael looked at Jack with a neutral expression. "Good morning. I was wondering if I could speak with the manager." Jack's smile faltered for a moment. "I'm afraid the manager is in an important meeting at the moment, but I'm sure I can help you with any inquiries you have about our vehicles." I appreciate your offer, Michael responded, but I insist on speaking with the manager. It's a rather urgent matter. Before Jack could respond, Emily approached. Mr. Roberts, it's nice to see you again, she said with a genuine smile. I'm sorry to inform you that the manager is still in a series of important meetings this week. May I take a more detailed message for him? Michael returned the smile. Thank you, Miss Johnson. I appreciate your help. In that case, I'll come back another time. As Michael headed for the exit, Jack couldn't resist making one last attempt. Mr. Roberts, if you're interested in any of our models, I'd be happy to show you our collection. Michael stopped and turned to Jack. Thank you, but that won't be necessary. I'm already quite familiar with these cars. And with that, he left the dealership, leaving Jack perplexed and Emily even more intrigued. What none of them knew was that while this was happening, a conversation was taking place in the manager's office that would change the course of Elite Motors. The manager, a man in his 50s named Tom Harrison, was sitting at his desk, pale and sweaty. In front of him, a tall, thin man with thin-framed glasses looked at him seriously. Mr. Harrison, said the man, I'm Mark Davidson, business consultant for Roberts Industries. I'm here to inform you that, effective immediately, our company will no longer supply vehicles to Elite Motors. Tom felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. But why? We're one of your most successful distributors. Our sales are excellent. Mark adjusted his glasses. The reasons are confidential, Mr. Harrison. All I can tell you is that this decision comes directly from the top of Roberts Industries. There must be some mistake, insisted Tom, desperate. Could I speak with someone from the board? Perhaps Mr. Mitchell? I'm afraid that won't be possible, interrupted Mark. The decision is final. You will be allowed to sell your current inventory, but you will receive no further shipments. Good day, Mr. Harrison. With that, Mark stood up and left the office, leaving Tom slumped in his chair trying to process what had just happened. Meanwhile, on the sales floor, Jack and Alex were arguing about the mysterious Michael Roberts. I'm telling you, there's something off. About that guy, insisted Alex. Why does he keep insisting on seeing the manager? Maybe he's an eccentric buyer, suggested Jack. I've heard stories of millionaires who dress simply to avoid attention. Or maybe he's a scam artist, countered Alex. Either way, I don't like it. Emily, who had been listening to the conversation, couldn't help but interject. Haven't you considered that maybe he's just a customer who deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of his appearance? Both salesmen looked at her in surprise, not used to the receptionist voicing her opinion. Emily, said Jack condescendingly, you don't understand how this business works. We know how to identify real customers. Yeah, added Alex, and that guy isn't a real customer, he's a waste of time. Emily was about to respond when the manager's office door swung open. Tom Harrison emerged with a shocked expression, muttering to himself. All the employees fell silent, watching with concern. Emergency meeting, announced Tom with a trembling voice. Everyone to the conference room, now. As the employees headed to the conference room, a feeling of unease spread through the dealership. No one knew what was happening, but everyone could feel that something big was about to unfold. At that moment, miles away, in Richard Mitchell's office, Michael Roberts entered with a smile on his face. How was your visit, old friend? Asked Richard. Exactly as we expected, replied Michael. I think it's time to move on to the next phase of our plan. Richard nodded, his expression a mix of determination and something that seemed almost sadness. So be it then, it's time for Elite Motors to learn a valuable lesson. And so while Elite Motors prepared for a meeting that would change their lives, the gears of a larger plan continued to turn, leading everyone toward a destiny none of them could foresee. The atmosphere in the conference room at Elite Motors was tense. The employees looked at each other, confused and worried, while they waited for manager Tom Harrison to start the emergency meeting. Emily sat in a corner, watching Jack and Alex whispering, probably speculating about the reason for the meeting. Finally, Tom entered the room. His face, usually confident and authoritative, now showed signs of stress and worry. He stood in front of everyone, took a deep breath, and began to speak. Colleagues, I have news that will significantly impact our business, he said with a trembling voice. A few moments ago, I received a visit from a representative of Roberts Industries. They informed me that they have decided to cut business ties with us. A murmur of astonishment and confusion ran through the room. Roberts Industries was Elite Motors' main supplier, responsible for over 80% of the vehicles they sold. "What does this mean exactly?" asked Jack, his usual confidence replaced by evident concern. Tom sighed. "It means we will no longer receive shipments of vehicles from Roberts Industries. We will be able to sell our current inventory, but after that—" "But that's impossible," interrupted Alex. "We're their most successful distributor in the region. Why would they do something like this?" "They didn't give me a clear reason," replied Tom. "They only said that the decision came directly from the top of the company." Emily, who had been listening attentively, raised her hand. "Mr. Harrison, do you think this has anything to do with the man who has been visiting the dealership, Mr. Roberts?" All eyes turned to her. Tom frowned. "What man? What are you talking about, Emily?" Emily proceeded to explain Michael Roberts' 2 visits, his insistence on speaking with the manager, and the treatment he had received from Jack and Alex. As she spoke, Tom's face went from confusion to understanding and then to anger. "Are you telling me that a man came twice specifically asking for me, and no one informed me?" asked Tom, his voice rising with each word. Jack and Alex shifted, uncomfortably in their seats. "We thought he was just a bum the first time," Jack defended himself. "And the second time, well, you were in meetings." "That's no excuse," exploded Tom. "Do you have any idea what you've done? This Michael Roberts could be the key to all of this." The manager ran a hand through his hair, visibly frustrated. "I need to review the security camera footage. I want to see exactly how this man was treated." As Tom hurriedly left the room, the rest of the employees began to discuss among themselves. Trying to understand the gravity of the situation, Emily approached Jack and Alex. "I told you we should treat all customers with respect," she reminded them. Alex looked at her disdainfully. "Don't start, Emily. You have no idea how this business works." "Maybe it's time for the way it works to change," she replied before walking away. Meanwhile, in Richard Mitchell's office, the automotive magnate listened attentively to Michael Roberts' report. "So how did they react on your second visit?" asked Richard. Michael smiled slightly. "The salesman who had kicked me out the first time tried to be nice, but it was clearly fake. The receptionist, however, was genuinely kind on both occasions." Richard nodded thoughtfully. "Interesting, and the manager?" "I never got to see him," replied Michael. "Apparently he was always in meetings. Or that's what they told clients they didn't consider important," added Richard with a tone of disgust. "Well, I think it's time to move on to the next phase of our plan." Michael looked at his friend curiously. "Richard, are you sure you want to take this all the way? I know Elite Motors has been one of your most important distributors for years." Richard stood up and walked over to the window, looking out over the city that spread beneath them. "Michael, when I started in this business, I promised myself I would never forget where I came from, that I would treat every person with respect, regardless of their appearance or social status. Elite Motors has forgotten that fundamental principle." He turned back to his friend, his expression a mix of determination and something that looked almost like sadness. "Sometimes the only way to teach a lesson is with a firm hand. Elite Motors needs to learn that respect and empathy are just as important as sales." Michael nodded, understanding his friend's position. "What's the next step, then?" "We're going to give them one last chance," replied Richard. "Tomorrow you'll go back to the dealership. This time, I'll go with you." Meanwhile, back at Elite Motors, Tom Harrison watched in horror the security footage showing how Michael Roberts had been treated. Every condescending word, every look of disdain, every gesture of contempt was recorded, not only on tape, but in the manager's mind. When the recordings ended, Tom sat in silence for several minutes, processing what he had just seen. Finally, he picked up the phone and dialed an extension. "Jack, Alex, come to my office immediately," he ordered coldly. As the 2 salesmen headed toward what was sure to be a severe reprimand, Emily continued at her post, attending to customers with her usual kindness. Unbeknownst to her actions were about to change the course of her career and the entire company. As the day came to an end, a sense of uncertainty loomed over Elite Motors. No one knew what tomorrow would bring, but everyone felt they were on the brink of a great change. And so, as the sun set over the city, The gears of fate continued to turn, leading everyone involved toward a confrontation that would change their lives forever. The next morning dawned grey and overcast, as if the weather reflected the mood at Elite Motors. Employees arrived early, all with a mix of anxiety and curiosity about what the day would bring. Jack and Alex, normally the most confident and loudest of the group, entered in silence, their expressions somber. The reprimand they had received from Tom the previous day had been brutal, and both knew they were walking on thin ice. Emily, for her part, arrived with her usual smile, determined to maintain a positive attitude despite the tension in the air. Tom gathered all the staff before opening the doors to the public. "Listen up," he began, his voice laden with seriousness. "We're in a critical situation. I need each of you to give your best today. Treat every customer as if they were the owner of Roberts Industries in person, understood?" Everyone nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Good," Tom continued. "Let's open the doors and may God help us." The first few hours passed without incident. Customers came and went, some buying, others just looking. Jack and Alex made an effort to be polite to everyone, even those who clearly couldn't afford the luxurious vehicles. Around noon, the doors opened once more. Two men walked in. One was Michael Roberts, dressed in a casual but elegant suit, and the other was a man in his 60s with silver hair and a distinguished demeanor. Emily recognized them immediately. "Mr. Roberts, welcome back," she greeted warmly. Then, turning to the other man, she added, "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Elite Motors. How can I assist you?" The older man returned the smile. "Good morning, Miss Mai. Name is Richard Mitchell. I was wondering if we could speak with the manager." Upon hearing the name, Emily felt her heart skip a beat. Richard Mitchell, the owner of Roberts Industries, was standing in front of her. Maintaining her composure, she replied, "Of course, Mr. Mitchell. Allow me to see if Mr. Harrison is available." While Emily hurried to Tom's office, Jack and Alex, who had been watching the scene from afar, exchanged a look of surprise and terror. "Is that?" began Alex. "Yes," confirmed Jack, his voice barely a whisper. "We're screwed." Tom Harrison rushed out of his office upon hearing who was in the dealership. With his heart racing, he approached the two men. "Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Roberts," he greeted, trying to maintain his calm. "It's an honor to have you here. Please come to my office." As the three men headed to the office, Tom signaled Emily to accompany them once inside. With the door closed, the silence became almost palpable. Richard Mitchell was the first to speak. "Mr. Harrison, I suppose you know why we're here." Tom nodded, his face pale. "Mr. Mitchell, I assure you, whatever has happened, we can fix it. Elite Motors has been a loyal partner for years." Richard raised a hand, interrupting him. "Mr. Harrison, loyalty is important, yes, but even more important is how we treat people. My friend Michael here has seen firsthand how your dealership treats customers who don't appear appropriate." Michael spoke up. "I must say, Mr. Harrison, I'm disappointed. I came here twice, asking to speak with you, and both times I was treated with disdain by your salesman." Tom slumped in his chair, defeated. "I know, and I can't express how sorry I am. I've seen the recordings and—" "Recordings?" Richard arched an eyebrow. "Yes," Tom responded. "We have security cameras throughout the dealership. When I learned what had happened, I reviewed the recordings and, well, it was disheartening to see how my employees treated Mr. Roberts." Richard and Michael exchanged a look. This was something they had not anticipated. "Mr. Harrison," Richard's tone softened slightly, "could we see those recordings?" Over the next hour, the four of them watched the interactions between Michael and the staff of Elite Motors. Richard and Michael saw how Jack and Alex treated Michael with contempt, but they also noticed something else: Emily's constant kindness. When the recordings ended, Richard turned to Emily. "Miss Johnson, correct?" Emily nodded nervously. "Yes, sir." "I must commend you," Richard continued. "Your treatment of Mr. Roberts was exemplary on both occasions. It's refreshing to see someone who understands the importance of respect and empathy in business." Emily blushed at the compliment. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I'm just doing my job." Richard smiled. "And you do it exceptionally well." Then he turned to Tom. "Mr. Harrison, I believe we have much to discuss about the future of our business." relationship. Tom nodded, bracing himself for the worst. However, Richard's next words surprised him. I'm not going to deny that I was about to cut all ties with Elite Motors, Richard said. But after seeing these recordings and meeting Miss Johnson, I believe there might be hope for your dealership. Michael intervened. Richard, are you sure? After everything we've seen? Richard nodded. I'm sure, old friend. I think with the right changes, Elite Motors could become a model of customer service excellence. He turned to Tom. Mr. Harrison, I'm willing to give Elite Motors one last chance, but with conditions. Tom, relieved but cautious, asked, What conditions, Mr. Mitchell? First, Richard began, I want you to implement a customer service training program for all your employees. Second, the two salesmen who mistreated Mr. Roberts must be appropriately disciplined. And third, he paused, looking at Emily, I want Miss Johnson to lead that training program and be promoted to a position where she can have more influence over the company's culture. Emily's eyes widened in surprise while Tom nodded vigorously. Of course, Mr. Mitchell. I'll do everything you say, Richard smiled. Excellent, Michael, and I will be closely monitoring Elite Motors' progress over the next few months. Don't let us down. As Richard and Michael prepared to leave, Emily gathered the courage to speak. Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Roberts, thank you for this opportunity. I promise you won't be disappointed. Michael smiled warmly at her. I'm sure you won't, Miss Johnson. You have a natural gift for this. When the two men left, Tom collapsed in his chair, letting out a long sigh of relief. Then he looked at Emily with a mix of gratitude and respect. Well, Miss Johnson, it looks like we have a lot of work ahead. Are you ready for the challenge? Emily nodded, a determined smile on her face. More than ready, Mr. Harrison. I think this is the beginning of something great for Elite Motors. And so as the news spread throughout the dealership, causing a mix of shock, relief and anticipation among the employees, no one could imagine how deeply this day would change not only Elite Motors, but also the lives of everyone involved. The storm had passed, but the ripples of its impact were just beginning to spread. In the following weeks, the transformation at Elite Motors was nothing short of remarkable. Emily Johnson took on her new role with enthusiasm and determination, dedicating long hours to researching best practices in customer service, designing training modules, and preparing to lead the cultural shift at Elite Motors. The first major change was the disciplining of Jack and Alex. Following Richard Mitchell's instructions, Tom Harrison suspended them without pay for 2 weeks and placed them on probation for 6 months. Additionally, they were informed that they would be the first to undergo the new customer service training program. Emily, for her part, immersed herself in her new role with vigor. She spent long hours researching best practices in customer service, designing training modules, and preparing to lead the cultural shift at Elite Motors. One morning, as Emily worked in her new office, a small cubicle that used to serve as a storage room, Tom walked in with a concerned expression. Emily, he began, I need your opinion on something. Emily looked up from her computer. Of course, Mr. Harrison. What's going on? Tom sat down across from her, sighing deeply. It's about Jack and Alex. Their suspension ends tomorrow, and frankly, I'm not sure if we should let them return. Emily frowned, thoughtful. I understand your concern, Mr. Harrison, but I think firing them would be a mistake. Why do you say that? Asked Tom, surprised. Well, Emily explained, if we fire them, we'd be sending the message that we don't believe in people's ability to change and improve, and that's the opposite of what we're trying to achieve with our new approach. Tom nodded slowly, considering her words. Emily continued, Besides, I think Jack and Alex could become our biggest success stories if we managed to change their attitude. Imagine the impact it would have on the rest of the team to see the former bad guys become models of customer service. A faint smile appeared on Tom's face. You're right, Emily. As always. Okay, we'll give them another chance, but they'll be under your direct supervision during the training program. Emily nodded, accepting the challenge. I won't let you down, Mr. Harrison. The next day, Jack and Alex returned to Elite Motors. The atmosphere was tense as they walked in, with their colleagues watching them with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Emily greeted them at the entrance. Good morning, Jack, Alex, she said with a professional smile. "Welcome back. Please follow me to the conference room." Once in the room, Emily explained the new training program and the expectations for them. To her surprise, both men listened attentively, without the arrogant attitude they usually displayed. "Miss Johnson," Jack said when Emily finished her explanation, "I know Alex and I have been difficult in the past, but we want you to know that we're committed to changing." Alex nodded, adding, "These 2 weeks gave us a lot of time to reflect. We realized that our behavior was not only unprofessional, but also put everyone's future at Elite Motors in jeopardy." Emily looked at them, searching for signs of insincerity, but saw only genuine regret in their eyes. "I appreciate your honesty," she replied. "This won't be an easy process, but if you're truly committed, I believe we can achieve great things together." As the weeks passed, the change at Elite Motors became increasingly evident. Emily's training program was yielding results, and the employees began adopting a more empathetic and respectful approach toward all customers. To the surprise of many, Jack and Alex became the most dedicated students. Their natural competitiveness drove them to excel in the new skills they were learning. One day, as Emily watched Jack interact with a modest-looking customer, she couldn't help but smile. The salesman was showing the same enthusiasm and respect he would have shown to a wealthy executive. "Impressive, isn't it?" said a voice behind her. Emily turned to see Michael Roberts, who had entered the dealership unnoticed. "Mr. Roberts," Emily greeted, surprised. "I didn't know you were coming today." Michael smiled. "Richard and I have been closely monitoring Elite Motors' progress. I must say, Miss Johnson, we're very impressed with the changes you've implemented." Emily blushed at the compliment. "Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Everyone has worked very hard." "That's evident," replied Michael. "In fact, Richard is considering using Elite Motors as a model to implement similar changes in other dealerships." Emily's eyes lit up at this news. "That would be wonderful, Mr. Roberts. I firmly believe that this approach is not only morally right, but also good for business." Michael nodded, his gaze fixed on Emily with a mix of admiration and something else she couldn't quite identify. "I agree. And speaking of business, would you like to have dinner with me tonight to discuss some ideas on how we could expand this program?" Emily was taken aback by the invitation, but found herself nodding before she could think twice. "I'd love to, Mr. Roberts." "Excellent," Michael smiled. "And please call me Michael." As Michael said goodbye and left the dealership, Emily couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness, not just about the opportunity to discuss the program's expansion, but also about the prospect of spending time alone with Michael Roberts. What Emily didn't know was that this dinner would mark the beginning of a new phase in her life, one that would bring both opportunities and challenges she had never imagined. Meanwhile, in his office, Tom Harrison looked over the latest sales reports with a smile of satisfaction. The numbers didn't lie. The new approach was working. Sales had increased. Customer reviews were increasingly positive, and the atmosphere in the dealership was better than ever. However, a small part of him couldn't help but feel a twinge of concern. What if Roberts Industries decided to take Emily to implement this program in other dealerships? Could Elite Motors maintain this success without her? Tom shook his head, trying to dispel these negative thoughts. For now, he would focus on the present success and support Emily in any way he could. The future, with all its challenges and opportunities, would come when it had to. And so, as the sun set over another successful day at Elite Motors, no one could imagine the twists and turns that fate had in store for all of them in the coming days. The night had fallen over the city when Emily arrived at the restaurant where she had agreed to meet Michael Roberts. It was an elegant but cozy place, with dim lights and the soft murmur of conversations in the background. Michael was already there, waiting for her at a secluded table. He stood to greet her with a warm smile. "Emily, I'm glad you could make it." "Thank you for the invitation, Michael," she replied, feeling a bit nervous but excited. Once seated and with their orders placed, Michael went straight to the point. "Emily, I've been talking with Richard about the success of the program you've implemented at Elite Motors. We're very impressed and believe it could have an even greater impact if we expand it. Emily nodded, intrigued. What do you have in mind? We want to implement your training program in all our dealerships nationwide, Michael explained, and we'd like you to lead that effort. Emily almost choked on her water. Me, but how? Michael smiled at her surprise. You would be in charge of developing a standardized training program based on what you've done at Elite Motors. You'd travel across the country, training managers and key employees at each dealership. Essentially, you'd be our ambassador for customer service. Emily's mind was racing. It was an incredible opportunity, something she could only dream of a few weeks ago. But it also meant leaving behind Elite Motors, the place where it all started. It's a very generous offer, she said finally, but I need time to think about it. Elite Motors has been my home, and I'm not sure I can leave it just like that. Michael nodded understandingly. Of course, I understand. Take all the time you need to consider it. But there's something else you should know. Emily looked at him expectantly. Richard and I have been discussing the possibility of buying Elite Motors, Michael revealed. If that happens, you could keep your base there while traveling to implement the program in other dealerships. This revelation left Emily speechless, sir. It was a lot to process. The rest of the dinner passed in a mix of business discussion and personal conversation. Emily found herself enjoying Michael's company more than she expected. There was a warmth and sincerity in him that contrasted with his image as a successful businessman. When the night came to an end and Michael walked her to her car, Emily felt a mix of emotions: excitement about the opportunities opening up before her, worry about the changes they would entail, and a growing attraction to Michael that she couldn't ignore. "Thank you for tonight, Michael," Emily said as they reached her car. "You've given me a lot to think about." Michael smiled, his eyes shining in the dim light of the parking lot. "It was my pleasure, Emily. I look forward to your answer, whatever it may be. And I hope we can do this again, regardless of your professional decision." Emily felt a flutter in her stomach at his words. "I'd like that," she replied with a shy smile. As she drove home, Emily couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened: the job offer, the possible purchase of Elite Motors, and her emerging feelings for Michael. She knew she had important decisions to make, decisions that could change the course of her life. The next day at Elite Motors, Emily found herself distracted, her mind still spinning with the events of the previous night. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she didn't notice Jack approaching her. "Emily, are you okay?" Jack asked, snapping her out of her reverie. Emily blinked, returning to the present. "Oh, Jack, yes, I'm fine, just a lot to think about." Jack looked at her with concern. "Do you want to talk about it? I know I haven't always been the kindest person, but you've done so much for all of us. If I can help in any way." Emily was surprised by the offer. It was a testament to how much things had changed at Elite Motors. "Thank you, Jack, I really appreciate it. It's just that I might have an opportunity to do something bigger, but it would mean leaving Elite Motors, at least partially." Jack nodded understandingly. "I get it. It's a tough decision, but Emily, if anyone deserves an opportunity like this, it's you. You've transformed this place, you've transformed all of us. Maybe it's time to take that change to a bigger level." Jack's words touched Emily deeply. "Thank you, Jack. That means a lot coming from you." As Jack walked away, Emily realized she had made her decision. It was time to take the next step, to bring her mission of change and respect to a wider level. That night, after talking with Tom Harrison and ensuring that Elite Motors would be in good hands, Emily called Michael. "I've made my decision," she said when he answered, "I accept the offer." She could hear the smile in Michael's voice as he responded, "Excellent, Emily. You won't regret it. How about we meet tomorrow to discuss the details?" "That sounds perfect," Emily replied, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness about what lay ahead. As she hung up the phone, Emily looked out the window at the city lights. She realized she was on the brink of a new chapter in her life, one filled with promise and challenges, and while she didn't know exactly what the future held, she was ready to face it with the same determination and empathy she had shown at Elite Motors. What Emily didn't know was that her decision would trigger a series of events that would not only change her, tried and true methods. However, Emily's determination and empathy, combined with tangible results from Elite Motors, gradually won them over. One afternoon, while Emily was presenting her program at a dealership in Chicago, she faced a particularly skeptical group. The branch manager, Frank Thompson, looked at her with barely concealed disdain. "Miss Johnson," Frank interrupted during her presentation, "all this sounds very nice, but we sell cars, not hugs. How do you expect us to maintain our sales figures if we spend all day being nice to people who can't even afford our vehicles?" Emily took a deep breath, remembering her early days at Elite Motors. "Mr. Thompson, I understand your concern. But let me ask you this. How many sales have you lost because a potential customer was treated with disdain based on their appearance?" Frank frowned, clearly uncomfortable. Emily continued, "At Elite Motors, we increased our sales by 30% in the first 6 months after implementing this program. And not only that, our customer satisfaction rate skyrocketed, leading to more referrals and repeat customers." She stepped closer to Frank, looking him directly in the eyes. "This program isn't just about being nice. It's about building lasting relationships with customers, creating a reputation that attracts more people to your dealership. It's about seeing every person who walks through that door as a human being, not just a walking wallet." The silence that followed was broken by one of the younger salespeople. "I think she's right," he said timidly. "Last week, a guy in old clothes came in and we all ignored him. It turned out he was a local business owner looking to buy a fleet of vehicles for his company. We were so rude that he went to the competition." Frank paled at this revelation. Emily seized the moment. "Gentlemen, I ask you to give me a chance. Let's implement this program for 3 months. If you don't see positive results, you can go back to your old ways. What do you say?" Gradually, the faces in the room began to show signs of acceptance. Even Frank, though still reluctant, nodded slowly. "All right, Miss Johnson. We'll give it a try your way." That night, exhausted but satisfied, Emily called Michael to report on her progress. "That's fantastic, Emily," Michael exclaimed after hearing about her success in Chicago. "I knew you could do it. You're changing the industry, one dealership at a time." Emily smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest at Michael's enthusiasm. "Thank you for believing in me, Michael. I couldn't do this without your support." There was a pause on the line before Michael spoke. Again, his voice softer. "Emily, I've been thinking it's been months since we had dinner together. How about we meet when you get back to town? There's something important I'd like to discuss with you." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "I'd love that, Michael. I'll be back next weekend." After hanging up, Emily looked out the window of her hotel room, watching the city lights. She thought about how much her life had changed in such a short time. From receptionist to leader of a movement for change in the automotive industry. And now, this growing connection with Michael, her thoughts were interrupted by a ping from her phone. It was a message from Jack. "Emily, you won't believe this Elite Motors just won the award for Best Customer Service at the annual Automotive Industry Convention. All thanks to you. We all miss you here, but we're so proud of what you're achieving. Keep it up, boss." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. Jack's message was a tangible reminder of the impact she was having, not just on the business, but on people's lives. The following days passed in a blur of presentations, training sessions, and one-on-one conversations with skeptical employees. But with each passing day, Emily saw the seeds of change begin to take root. Finally, the day of her return home arrived. As the plane landed, Emily felt a mix of excitement and nervousness about her dinner with Michael. That evening, as she prepared for the dinner, Emily found herself paying more attention than usual to her appearance. She put on an elegant black dress and applied a touch of makeup, something she rarely did on her business trips. When she arrived at the restaurant, Michael was already there, waiting for her with a smile that made her heart flutter. "Emily," he said, standing to greet her with a kiss on the cheek. "You look beautiful." Emily blushed. "Thank you, Michael. You look great too." Once seated and with their drinks served, Michael looked at her with an intensity that made her hold her breath. "Emily," he began. What you've accomplished in these months is nothing short of extraordinary. You've transformed entire dealerships, changed the way people think about customer service in our industry." He paused, taking a sip of his wine before continuing. "But that's not what I wanted to talk to you about tonight." Emily looked at him, intrigued. "No?" Michael shook his head. "No, Emily. These past months working together, watching you change people's lives with your compassion and determination, I've realized something." He leaned forward, taking her hand across the table. "I've fallen in love with you, Emily." The world seemed to stop for a moment. Emily felt her heart pounding in her chest. "Michael, But before she could respond, Michael's phone rang urgently. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "I'm sorry, I have to take this." "It's Richard," he said, standing up from the table. Emily nodded, still reeling from his confession. She watched as he spoke on the phone, his expression shifting from concern to shock. When he returned to the table, his face was pale. "Emily, there's a problem, a big problem." "What is it?" she asked, her worry replacing her emotional confusion. Michael took a deep breath before responding. "It's Elite Motors. There's been a scandal. Someone has leaked information about unethical practices that have supposedly been happening there behind our backs." Emily felt like she had been punched in the stomach. "What? But how is that possible? We've worked so hard to change the culture there." Michael shook his head. "I don't know. But this could destroy everything we've built, not just at Elite Motors, but in all the dealerships where you've implemented your program." Emily sat in silence for a moment, processing the information. Then, with a determination that surprised even Michael, she said, "We have to go back. Now we need to find out what's going on and fix it." Michael nodded, a small smile appearing on his face despite the gravity of the situation. That's the Emily I know, always ready to face any challenge. As they hurriedly left the restaurant, Emily knew they were about to face their biggest test yet. The scandal at Elite Motors threatened to undo everything they had achieved, but as she walked alongside Michael, she felt a strange mix of fear and confidence. No matter what awaited them, they would face this new challenge together. And in that moment, Emily realized that she too had fallen in love with Michael. With her heart racing from a mix of emotions and adrenaline, Emily and Michael headed into the unknown, ready to fight for everything they had built and for the future they were just beginning to glimpse together. The dawn was just breaking when Emily and Michael arrived at Elite Motors. The parking lot, usually empty at that hour, was filled with press vehicles and onlookers who had caught wind of the scandal. "This is worse than I thought," Michael murmured as he helped Emily out of the car. At the dealership entrance, Tom Harrison was waiting with a defeated expression on his face. "Emily, Michael, thank God you're here," he said in a weary voice. "Tom, what's going on?" Emily asked, getting straight to the point. Tom led them to his office, closing the door to isolate them from the chaos outside. "Last night, someone leaked information to the press about supposed fraudulent practices at Elite Motors, odometer tampering, hiding defects in used cars, even bribing inspectors." Emily sank into a chair, stunned. "But that's impossible. We've worked so hard to change the culture here." "I know," Tom said, running a hand through his graying hair, "and I swear I had no idea this was happening." Michael, who had been silent until then, spoke up. "Do you have any idea who could have leaked this information?" Tom shook his head. "No, but whoever did it had access to very detailed information. It has to be someone from inside." At that moment, a knock on the door interrupted their conversation. It was Jack with a determined expression on his face. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but I think I know who's behind this." The three of them looked at him expectantly. Jack took a deep breath before continuing. "It's Alex. I heard him talking on the phone last night, bragging about how he brought down Elite Motors." Emily jumped to her feet. "Alex? But why would he do something like this?" "I think he was resentful," Jack explained. "He never really accepted the changes we made. He always complained that he earned less commission under the new system." Michael frowned. "But that doesn't explain how he got information about practices that supposedly happened after we implemented the changes." A heavy silence fell over the room as everyone processed this information. It was Emily who finally broke the silence. Unless, she began, her mind working quickly, unless those fraudulent practices never actually happened, everyone's eyes widened in understanding. Of course, Tom exclaimed, Alex could have fabricated that. Information he knows enough about the business to make it look believable. But why go to such lengths? Michael asked. Jack looked down, ashamed. I think I know why. A few weeks ago, I heard Alex talking to someone from Auto Luxury, our main competitor. I think they offered him a job if he could discredit Elite Motors. Emily stood up, a new determination shining in her eyes. We need proof. If we can show that Alex fabricated this information, we can clear our names. Michael nodded. You're right, Jack. Do you think you can find any evidence on Alex's phone or computer? Jack nodded. I can try. I know his password for the dealership system. Do it, Tom ordered. But be discreet. We don't want Alex to suspect anything. While Jack left the office, Emily turned to Michael and Tom. We need a plan to handle the press in the meantime. We can't let this story keep growing. Out of control. Michael smiled, admiring Emily's determination. You're right, let's hold a press conference. We'll show transparency and our commitment to ethics. That will buy us some time while we gather the evidence. The following hours were a flurry of activity. While Jack searched for evidence, Emily and Michael prepared a statement for the press. Tom, for his part, worked to calm the worried employees. Just before the scheduled press conference, Jack burst into the office, out of breath but with a triumphant smile. I've got it, he panted, holding up a USB drive. Emails between Alex and the manager at Auto Luxury detailed plans to fabricate the scandal. There's even a promise of payment once Elite Motors falls. Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. You're a hero, Jack. With the evidence in hand, Emily and Michael stepped out to face the press. The conference was intense, with journalists throwing aggressive questions, but Emily, with her characteristic calm and honesty, managed the situation. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, we have discovered that the accusations against Elite Motors are completely false. They were fabricated by a disgruntled former employee in collaboration with our competitor. A murmur ran through the crowd of journalists. We have proof, Emily continued, that not only exonerates Elite Motors, but also exposes the conspiracy behind these false accusations. We are handing over all this information to the appropriate authorities for them to take necessary action. Michael stepped forward. Moreover, we want to reaffirm our commitment to ethics and customer service. The program implemented by Miss Johnson has not only improved our business practices, but has also transformed the culture of our company. We invite anyone interested to visit our facilities and see for themselves how we operate. Questions rained down on them, but Emily and Michael handled them with skill, responding with transparency and firmness. By the end of the conference, the tone of the media coverage had changed noticeably. What began as a devastating scandal was turning into a story of integrity and resilience in the face of unfair competition. Meanwhile, the police had been notified, and Alex was arrested for questioning. The evidence was overwhelming, and he soon confessed to his role in the plot. In the weeks that followed, Elite Motors not only recovered from the scandal, but emerged stronger than ever. The transparency and integrity displayed during the crisis attracted more customers, and sales soared to record levels. A month after the incident, Emily found herself in her new office at the headquarters of Roberts Industries. She had been promoted to Director of Corporate Culture and Customer Service, responsible for implementing her program in all the dealerships associated with the company. As she reviewed some reports, a knock on the door made her look up. It was Michael. Do you have a moment? He asked with a smile. For you always, Emily replied, feeling butterflies in her stomach as always when she saw him. Michael entered and closed the door behind him. I've been thinking about our interrupted dinner, he said, approaching her desk. Emily felt her heart race. I've thought a lot about that too. Michael took her hands in his. Emily, these past months have been crazy scandals, challenges, changes. But amidst all that, my love for you has only grown. You're the most amazing person I've ever met. Your compassion, your determination, your integrity. You inspire me to be better every day. Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes. Michael, Wait, he interrupted gently. Let me finish. He got down on one knee, pulling out a small box from his pocket. Emily Johnson, will you do me the honor of marrying me? Emily felt the world stand still for a moment. Then, with tears of joy streaming down her cheeks, she nodded. Yes, Michael. Yes, I'll marry you. Michael slipped the ring on her finger and stood up to kiss her. In that moment, everything they had been through, every challenge and triumph, seemed like the perfect path that had led them to this moment. Days later, at Elite Motors, Emily and Michael gathered all the staff to share the news, not only about their engagement, but also about future plans for the company. Thanks to all of you, Emily said, for believing in this vision of a business based on respect and empathy. You've shown that it's possible to succeed without compromising our values, Michael continued, and that's why we've decided to make Elite Motors the flagship of our new approach. We'll expand this dealership and turn it into a training center for all our branches. Applause and cheers filled the room. Jack came forward to congratulate the couple. I'll never be able to thank you enough for the opportunity you gave me, he said. You've changed my life. Emily hugged him. You've changed ours too, Jack. Everyone here is part of this transformation. As they watched the celebration around them, Emily and Michael exchanged a look of love and complicity. They had faced incredible challenges, but together they had not only overcome every obstacle, but also transformed an entire industry. The future stretched out before them, full of promises and new challenges. But with the love they shared and the support of the people around them, they knew they could face anything fate had in store. And so, as the sun set over another successful day at Elite Motors, Emily reflected on the incredible journey that had taken her from being a simple receptionist to becoming the architect of a revolutionary change in the automotive industry. Her story was a testament to the power of kindness, integrity, and perseverance. As Michael took her hand, Emily knew that this was not the end of her story, but just the beginning of a new and exciting chapter.